Right, so how many of you guys are fed up with hearing me talk about the Nintendo Switch? Because I certainly am. So what am I going to talk about today? I'm going to talk about the Xbox Scorpio and the PS4, and whether Sony can maintain its market dominance in the face of the Scorpio. And I don't know what you guys think, but it's an interesting question, so let's get on with it. So as I say, the Scorpio's coming later this year. We don't actually know when it's going to arrive, but we can make a pretty reasonable guess that it's going to turn up sometime around holiday or just before holiday this year. And at that point, the PS4 and specifically the PS4 Pro is going to have some much needed competition because Sony's been killing it in the sales figures. And I don't know if you guys have seen, but it's doing very, very well. And we're in a very similar situation that we were last generation, although in reverse. Because last generation, Microsoft had a pretty decent lead over the PS3 with the 360, and Sony managed to claw that back. And by the end of the generation, we had the Xbox 360 on 85 million and the PS3 on 86 million sales. So in the end, the PS3 actually clawed it back and overtook the 360, only by a small margin, but it did. So even though the 360 was in the lead for some considerable time, by the time Sony got its act together and got up and running and reduced the cost of the PS3 to a decent price, they ended up just about on top. Only just. I mean, it's marginal. So the question is, I suppose, can Microsoft do that this generation? Because we had the PS3 being far too expensive on launch, and the 360 was more powerful. And as I said before, the Xbox One was too expensive on launch, partly because of Kinect being bundled with it, and the PS4 was more powerful. So now we're getting a situation where Microsoft are redressing the balance. And in fact, by the time the Scorpio comes out, they are going to be the most powerful console by some considerable margin. So as I say, then the PS4 is going to have some real competition. However, there is a slight difference this time round, because while the 360 did have a margin on the PS3 and was ahead for some considerable time, the level of difference wasn't the same level as we've got here. And if you look at the difference between the Xbox One and the PS4, well, it's pretty unassailable, I would say. At the time of recording this, the last figures I saw were showing that the PS4 had 53.4 million units sold. And that was roughly, and we can only say roughly because we're not absolutely sure, but roughly twice that of the Xbox One. Add to that the fact that the PS4's attach rate is pretty good in that it's higher than both the Wii, which had an attach rate of 7.1, and the PS2, which had an attach rate of 6.2. And as people have said, if you're beating the PS2, you're doing pretty well. I did read an article in which they pointed out that back then we didn't have indie titles, so the attach rate has been skewed slightly by that, and I think that's a good point. But if we look at the attach rate for the PS4, we find that it's actually at 7.51, which by anyone's reckoning is pretty good. The only glimmer of hope, really, I suppose, in all this for the Xbox One so far is that if you look at Ubisoft's figures, they're suggesting that for every dollar spent on the PS4, that's for games, $1.25 is spent on Xbox One games. And that suggests that we've got a significantly higher attach rate with the Xbox One. The only problem there is obviously it's just Ubisoft, and we don't know if that tracks across the whole of the industry. And there's a good bet that it maybe is better or worse across different developers. But however way you cut it, the PS4 is selling like hotcakes and its games are selling well as well. So bring the Scorpio into this market, and then you have to look at what's being sold in terms of games this year. And the list of games that are available for the PS4 this year far exceeds that for the Xbox One so far. And we may see that changing somewhat when we get to E3 because, Microsoft has got a track record of bringing out new games for that year at E3 and trundling them out and showing everybody at that point. Whereas Sony tend to be more of a slow burn. They'll show us things at E3 that aren't coming until 1, maybe 2 years down the line, maybe even further down the line. So perhaps we're going to see some big hitters from Microsoft at E3. And I'll be pretty disappointed if we don't, to be honest. If the Scorpio does get some decent games that are releasing either just before it or just after it or even with the launch, and I think that would be a good bet to see some games coming out on the day of launch, then I do think that Microsoft can make some inroads into Sony's market dominance. However, I don't think they're ever going to fully catch them. I think they can claw some of it back, and I think if people start seeing the Scorpio and see that it has got superior graphics and it is a majorly superior console, and that's an if people do see that, then I do think it can claw some of it back. But I think that at the end of this generation, if we are going to have generational cycles again, Sony will be still in the lead. However, if you take half of 53.4 million, that's roughly 26 million consoles sold? That's still a pretty hefty haul. So I don't think Microsoft's got anything too much to worry about. And as I say, if they can claw some of it back, I think it would be a successful generation for them. So I think Sony are doing great. I think Microsoft are probably going to do better in the years that follow. And I think they're both going to go from strength to strength, personally. And that can only be good for gamers. But what do you guys think? Do you agree with me? Do you think Microsoft are going to haul Sony back and overtake them? Do you think Sony are going to keep powering on ahead and leave Microsoft in the dust? Do you think the Switch is going to kill them both? As one guy suggested, that the Switch was going to destroy the Xbox, which I thought was rather bizarre. But, that's an opinion. Anyway, as I say, if you guys agree with me, come and tell me. If you disagree with me, come and tell me. Let me know why. And we'll have a chat about it. And in the meantime, I'm off again, going to get myself a cup of tea, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.